Well, could Marvel once again be making the near impossible happen on screen? We got some new reports earlier today that the legendary Robert Downey Jr. might be returning in future Avenger movies. Now, this is a skeptical report, but I wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about the rumor, where it's coming from, and honestly what I think of this whole suggestion. For me, it's a giant duh. Well, Robert Downey Jr. obviously holds a really special place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He kicked off the whole thing with 2008's Iron Man and gave us quite the tearful farewell eventually in Avengers Endgame, where he saved everybody by snapping Thanos and his army out of existence. Since the death of the character, many fans have been wondering, could Tony Stark potentially return? And some of the avenues where that could have happened are already starting to manifest. Many people like to point out that the AI that Ironheart used in the comics was a hologram of Tony Stark, very similar to the one at the end of Endgame. But now we're getting a report that he could actually make a return in upcoming Avengers projects. Now, this whole report is from Twitter, so we don't want to take this with a grain of salt. We want to dump about half the container on it. And I want to point something out before we dive into the story. A lot of times when these scoops are being formed, they're basically a giant obvious duh. There's almost no doubt in a multiverse battle in Marvel at the end of Phase 6, they would obviously want to bring back characters that are no longer in the franchise. We've talked about this many times on this channel, and it's really not any news. It's super obvious Marvel Studios would love to have Robert Downey Jr. back as Tony Stark to potentially close out Phase 6 and bring Iron Man back to the big screen. There's no questions about that, so I really do look at this scoop and have a lot of questions. Now, the tweet itself came from the MCU source, but it was confirmed partially by My Time to Shine Hello. Let's check the whole thing out. Now, what MCU source is claiming is that Iron Man will return in both Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, but My Time to Shine Hello says just Secret Wars. Now, additionally, he did go on to say that an adult Morgan Stark will return to the MCU in a very big way. How this fits into Secret Wars is still currently pretty unclear to me. She would still be a child in the MCU, but Marvel does like to do their time jumps, and that could be exactly what goes on before we get to Secret Wars. Now, as for Tony Stark returning, I think Marvel needs to be super careful. Outside of our sort of healthy skepticism about the report, I do think returning Tony Stark to life could undercut future sacrifices of heroes inside the Marvel Universe. Now, fans of comic books know people never stay dead in the comics. Well, most people never stay dead. And many Marvel characters have died in the comics only to return a couple years later, and maybe Marvel Studios is testing the water with those possibilities. Now again, I don't know the validity of the story, and I am very, very skeptical because it's one of the most obvious things that could happen inside the MCU anywhere. This is something with a lot of these scoopers that I don't know if you guys have noticed. Many of these scoopers reach out, make stories, and then take a bunch of obvious facts and then just plug them in with known comic storylines and pretend like it's a prediction or a scoop. Often, these are just potentially obvious paths Marvel Studios could take based on all the known variables that they've shared with us. They're not really scoops. So I want to make sure we all take this one with a huge dose of skepticism, because on this channel, we're more interested in the truth than rumor, and we want to separate ourselves from some of these scoopers that might be making stuff up. We don't know, but we're not going to claim to know, and I think in some of these cases, people are manipulating the fan base to get, well, clicks. Now, obviously, if Tony Stark does come back, and we've proposed it many times on this channel that he would, it'll be big news, and we'll cover every second of it. I think him returning in Secret Wars, along with Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson, could potentially push that movie at the box office past those Endgame results, and I am absolutely sure that that is exactly Marvel's goal. Now, obviously, we're going to cover everything Tony Stark and Secret Wars on this channel, so make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you get all of the updates. But until we know more, what do you guys think? What do you think of the possibility that Tony Stark could indeed return in Avengers Secret Wars? And is this a pretty obvious thing to everybody else? I mean, it really is to me. Tell me what you think in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure you hit like, click subscribe. If you don't ring that bell, you won't get any updates. Peace.